The courtroom fell silent as the defense attorney's chair sat empty. Marcus Chen, one of the country's most feared corporate lawyers, had vanished during the lunch recess, abandoning his client, abandoning his duty, abandoning everything he'd built over 30 years. The billionaire defendant, Richard Calloway, sat alone at the mahogany table, his empire crumbling around him, his freedom hanging by a thread. The judge's gavel struck once, twice, 3 times. "Mr. Chen, is defense counsel present?" Nobody answered. Nobody moved. And then, from the back of the courtroom, a voice broke through the tension, a voice that didn't belong to anyone in a $1,000 suit. "Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to speak on Mr. Calloway's behalf." Every head turned. Standing in the aisle, still holding his maintenance card, was David Torres. He wore navy blue work pants with his name stitched above the pocket, a company polo shirt, and work boots that had seen better years. His hands, calloused from decades of pushing mops and fixing what others broke, trembled slightly as he moved forward. David had been cleaning courthouses for 17 years, invisible to most, essential to all. He was a single father who'd raised his daughter Maria in a studio apartment above a laundromat, who'd worked double shifts so she could have new textbooks, who'd never missed a parent-teacher conference even when exhaustion made his bones ache. He was nobody special, nobody powerful, nobody anyone would notice. Until now. The prosecutor, Amanda Fisher, shot to her feet. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. This man isn't even an attorney." Judge Patricia Winters leaned forward, her experienced eyes studying David with curiosity rather than dismissal. "Mr. Torres, it is Torres, correct? You understand you're not qualified to provide legal representation." David nodded, stepping closer to the bench. His voice was steady despite the hundreds of eyes boring into him. "I understand that, Your Honor. I'm just a janitor. I clean these rooms after you all go home. But I've been cleaning this courthouse for 17 years, and in that time, I've listened. I've heard thousands of cases while I emptied trash cans and polished railings. I've watched justice happen and sometimes watched it fail. And I know Mr. Calloway's case because I've been in this courtroom every single day of this trial, even when nobody saw me." Richard Calloway stared at David with confusion mixed with something that might have been hope. The charges against him were serious: financial fraud, allegations that he'd embezzled millions from pension funds, destroying the retirement dreams of thousands of working families. People like David. People who couldn't afford to lose a single paycheck, let alone their life savings. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Judge Winters hesitated, then made a decision that would change everything. "Mr. Torres, you may speak, but understand, this is not legal representation. Consider this, a character witness. You have 15 minutes. David walked to the defense table and did something that shocked the room. He didn't sit beside Richard Calloway. He stood behind him and placed one hand on the man's shoulder, not as a lawyer would, but as one human being acknowledging another. "Your Honor, members of the jury, I don't know the law like Marcus Chen did. I never went to college. I got my GED while working nights because my daughter needed me during the day. But I know something about people. I know about judgment. And I know about redemption because I've needed it myself." He paused, his eyes moving across the jury box, connecting with each face. "Mr. Calloway is guilty. I'm not here to say he isn't. I've heard every piece of evidence. I've seen the documents. I know what he did was wrong, and those people who lost their savings deserve justice. They deserve restitution. But I'm here to tell you something the prosecutor hasn't mentioned, something Mr. Chen never brought up because maybe he thought it didn't matter." Amanda Fisher tensed, unsure where this was going. David continued, his voice gaining strength. 3 years ago, my daughter Maria got sick. Really sick. Leukemia. I had insurance through my job, but it wasn't enough. The bills were crushing me. I was going to lose our apartment. I was going to have to pull her out of treatment because I couldn't afford it anymore. I was standing in this very courthouse, in the hallway outside, crying because I didn't know what to do. And a man stopped. He asked me what was wrong. I told him my daughter was dying and I couldn't save her. Tears began streaming down David's face, but he didn't wipe them away. That man was Richard Calloway. He didn't know me. I was just some janitor having a breakdown in a courthouse hallway. But he listened. And then he did something that saved my daughter's life. He paid for her treatment. All of it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. He set up a fund so that even after she was in remission, she'd have care for life. He asked for nothing in return. He didn't want publicity. He didn't want recognition. He just helped because he could. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Richard Calloway's head dropped, his shoulders shaking. Judge Winters gavelled for quiet. David turned to face Richard directly. What you did to those people was wrong. It was terrible, and you need to face consequences. But you're not just the worst thing you've ever done. You're also the man who saved my daughter's life. You're the man who's quietly paid for 12 other families' medical bills that I know of because I asked around after Maria got better. You're complicated. You're human. You made terrible choices, but you've also made beautiful ones. He turned back to the jury. I'm not asking you to let him go. I'm asking you to see all of him. To remember that justice should be about making things right, not just punishment. He should pay back every penny he stole. He should face consequences. But maybe, just maybe, those consequences could include making him use his talents to fix what he broke, to spend his life rebuilding those pension funds, to become the person who saved my daughter instead of the person who hurt all those families. The silence in the courtroom was profound. David looked at Judge Winters. That's all I wanted to say, Your Honor. Thank you for letting me speak. He stepped back from the defense table, preparing to return to his cart, to his invisible life. But Richard Calloway stood, tears streaming down his face, and embraced David, not as a client to a representative, but as one broken person to another who'd shown him grace. I'm sorry, Richard whispered, loud enough for the microphones to catch. I'm so sorry for everything. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. 3 months later, Richard Calloway was sentenced to 5 years in a minimum security facility with provisions for work release. But more importantly, he was ordered to use his financial expertise to rebuild the pension funds he'd destroyed, working under federal oversight until every stolen penny was returned with interest. He established a foundation, using his remaining personal assets, to provide medical assistance for families who couldn't afford care. He named it the Maria Torres Foundation, over David's humble objections. Marcus Chen was disbarred for abandoning his client, but in a strange way, his failure created space for something more powerful than legal maneuvering. It created space for truth and humanity. David returned to his job, to his quiet life, but courtroom workers started seeing him differently. The janitor who'd stood up when a powerful lawyer had fled. The father who'd shown more courage than men with law degrees and corner offices. His daughter Maria, healthy and strong, started law school that fall. Someone has to make sure justice has room for mercy, she told her father. And David, who'd never sought recognition, who'd simply spoken truth when truth was needed, smiled and agreed. Sometimes the most powerful voices in our justice system don't come from those with the most education or the finest suits. Sometimes they come from those who've lived enough life to understand that people are complicated, that redemption is possible, and that the measure of a person isn't their worst moment but what they do with all the moments that follow.